Good evening and welcome to Image Builders Presents Conversations with Michael Carson. I'm Michael Carson and I'm your host tonight. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited about this show. This is our inaugural show, our first weekly 30-minute Facebook Live show for men and by men. Please follow me and like this page and join me on Instagram and Facebook. Soon you'll be able to join us on YouTube as well as buy merchandise for this show. Some time ago, when I thought about doing this show, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I reached out to my guest tonight and asked him would he be my first guest on my show. And I think within 5 minutes, he said, sure, I would be honored to. So I just really want to give a big shout out to my State Rep Roger Bruce, who's over District 38. Thank you, sir.
61.
61. I'm sorry, 61. Thank you for being here tonight with me on this first show. We wanted to do something a little different tonight, so I'm going to show your comments so that you can see them on the screen. For those of you that are in Georgia, this is not a political show. So if you have any comments or any questions about what's going on in the state capitol, what's going on in District 61, we will provide information at the end where you can contact Representative Bruce and leave your comments or email him and find out what you get your questions answered. So if you know anything about history, you would know that tomorrow would be the 92nd birthday, would have been the 92nd birthday for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as a result, we wanted to kick this first show off with talking about servanthood and servant leadership and what it means to serve. And I looked at and studied a little bit my first guest biography, and Representative Bruce, your work, your service throughout the years is exemplary. And we want to talk about that a little bit today. But to kick us off, tell us a little bit about who Roger Bruce is. Who is Roger Bruce? Not State Rep Roger Bruce, but who is Roger Bruce?
I am a product of a aunt that raised me, called her Aunt B. And okay. I think we all got an Aunt B somewhere.
Yes, sir.
But when I was 2 years old, I had pneumonia. And I'm the fifth child of a mother who, when I was born, she was 21 years old. Mm-hmm. And so it was a situation where my aunt had no children. My mother had 5 at a very young age. And I caught pneumonia at that age. And the doctor's office, back in those days, the doctor's office were in the apartment buildings.
Right.
And the doctor's office was in the building where my aunt lived. And so they took me over there to be close to the doctor. And when I recovered, it was, okay, I got 5, you don't have any, you stay over there.
Okay.
And but my aunt was a corrections officer at the Women's House of Detention.
Wow.
And, she would take me to work with her sometime. And that made it real clear I didn't want to go to jail.
Okay.
Because you saw how it looked.
Yeah.
And, but as time went on, just like anybody else, I guess, when I was about 14, I started asking the questions, why am I not living with my brothers and my sisters and with my mother? And I told my aunt, I said, I want to go live with my mother and my brothers and sisters. And she said, take your little butt on over there. And I think I was there maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most. And I called and I said, can I come back?
Okay.
And it was like, no, I guess that was my first lesson that I remember. You make a decision, you got to live with the decisions that you make.
Right.
And she told me no. So I started rebelling, and I got hit by a car when I was in the first grade. Wow. And, we sued, and all that kind of stuff. And there was this money set aside for me that I was supposed to get when I was 21. And, but when I went to this rebellious stage and wanted to go live with my mom, I started playing hooky from school and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Okay.
But I played hooky from school and went to the library and read books.
Wow.
I didn't play hooky and just cut up. I was just being rebellious, I guess. And but nonetheless, it was a situation where my aunt was like, I invested my time, my energy, my money in you. We're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So we went to court and we asked them if I could use the money that I was supposed to get from the car accident when I was 21 to go away to school, to get it at 14. Mm-hmm. So I ended up paying my own way through high school. I went to a place called St. Emma Military Academy, which was in Virginia.
Yes.
And it was a black military school. It was a Catholic military school, which was kind of weird because by day I was being taught how to love my neighbor and at night how to kill him. Okay. And, for a military. But when I got there, it was, they wanted me to do the ninth grade over again because I had, because I was playing hooky from school, mm-hmm. I didn't have any grades. So they wanted me to do it over again. And I was like, I don't want to do it over again. And so I cut a deal with the superintendent and, they call him the commandant, with the commandant of cadets. And I did the ninth grade and the 10th grade at the same time, the 8th grade and the ninth grade at the same time.
Wow.
And the deal was if I passed both, then I would go to my right grade. And which I did. I ended up doing both of them at the same time. And I ended up being the commandant, the battalion commander mm-hmm. At the school. And then I applied to go to Michigan State University. But whoever the guidance counselor was at St. Emma never sent my application to Michigan State, sent it to Morehouse.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I got accepted at Morehouse. Michigan never heard of me. Okay. And I ended up down here in Georgia. That's how I got here.
Okay.
And when I got here in 1971, and there was a governor's race going on. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy by the name of J.B. Stoner running for governor.
Okay.
And JB's campaign slogan was that he was going to get rid of crime in Georgia because he was sending niggas back to Africa. And so that kind of got my attention. And Morehouse had a program where you spend, you had to go and they would bring guests in mm-hmm. and to motivate us. And most, in my age, most of the guys grew up without a father at all.
Okay.
And most people were on a welfare system, and most black people were on a welfare system. And the welfare system back then, if there was a man in the house, they wouldn't give you any food.
Money. Yeah.
Yeah, or money.
Been there,
So that was the case back then. But anyway, Morehouse had this program, and the people came in, and this guy came in, and he was talking. He was saying all the stuff that you would really expect to get from a dad. Mm-hmm. It was, how you need to work together, how we needed to, form, do activities in the community, help each other, blah, blah, blah. He was saying all the stuff that you want to hear from a dad. And so when it was over with, I went up to him and I introduced myself. And he told me his name. And his name was Maynard Jackson. Okay. And I think most people know who Maynard Jackson was. Yes. Maynard and I became very good friends. I ended up being an intern at his law firm, which back then was Jackson, Patterson, Parks, and Franklin. And he was not mayor at the time. Mm-hmm. And he decided he was going to run for mayor. I got very involved in his campaign, ended up majoring in political science because of my interaction with him. And then I decided I was going to run for office. Right. And I ran in 1980. I ran for the State House back then. And I did not win. But my interest never stopped being there for wanting to be able to serve and wanting to be able to do things to help other people. And I ran again in 2002. and won, and I've been in office since that time. I know that was a long answer to
Well, no, no. It leads me into a few questions that I have, and I was impressed by your time at St. Emma so much so that I looked it up, and I know there was a campaign by others to get former students and others together to save it, so forth. I was looking at the history. So as a teenager, you would have been a teenager in the 60s, mid 60s, if I have the numbers correct. At that time, did Dr. King have an impact on you at all? Were you aware in that rebellious time, were you aware of what was going on and how that was making an impact on the country and on the world?
I never met Dr. King. You know, he was all over the place, but I never met him. But I met his father. His father and I served together on the board of EOA, Economic Opportunity Atlanta. So I got to know his father, and I got to know his children. And but I never met Dr. King. But back I remember when he was assassinated. I was just about to go to St. Emma at that point. And it was an interesting time because we knew about all of the issues that were going on. And one of the issues we had at St. Emma, most of the kids, well, just about all the kids were from somewhere else. So when we had to go home, it wasn't safe. So the school had to charter buses, and we went on the charter buses to go back to wherever cities we came from, because public transportation just wasn't safe back during that period of time. But no, I did not get to meet Dr. King, but clearly we were influenced by the things that he was doing. Now, I'm gonna be real honest with you. You know, it was a military school. So the idea of turning the other cheek after somebody hit you, that wasn't what was being taught, you know. And
so were they teaching you so were you getting the Malcolm X?
We were getting the Malcolm X version of yeah. And again, I understood the strategy, but it just didn't work. And that carried over into Morehouse, because when you got to Morehouse, they wanted us to pledge to these different fraternities. Back then, entry into a fraternity was a violent experience. And, you got beat and all kinds of stuff. And I gave it a shot. I got online, and but when they started whacking me, I just couldn't do it without whacking back. And that's what I did. So that didn't work out.
So the young Roger Bruce pre St. Elmo and St. Elmo wasn't having the fraternity stuff.
No, it didn't work.
So going to Morehouse, when you entered Morehouse, did they talk a lot about Dr. King? When was his statue erected at Morehouse?
Oh, that was
later.
Yeah, that was later. Yeah. Yeah, that was much later.
So so at Morehouse, did they talk about his strategies? Did they talk about? Did you learn about even more about service at Morehouse? Because
but it wasn't about Dr. King. Morehouse, being an institution for Black men,
right?
It was not just Dr. King. It was the whole concept of public service was just drilled into us.
Right.
That was just part of the institution's mission, was to develop men that were going to go out and do things that were going to cause, change in the world. And, so that was just part of the whole atmosphere there. You just felt it, as you went through that school. You just felt it. And if you didn't do some kind of public service, then you even if you got straight A's, if you didn't do some kind of public service, you didn't deserve to graduate from Morehouse. That's just the way it was. And Julian Bond, I don't know if you remember the name Julian Bond.
I do.
But Julian had an office. He was in the in the legislature back then.
Hmm.
His office was directly across the street from the campus,
Okay.
and I would go over there and spend time with him, and that kind of is what introduced me to the legislative process here. And like I said, and I ran for office 5 years out of school. And but the whole idea from Morehouse was that you were going to go out and find some way to influence, change in the world.
So how did you do that while at Morehouse, or did you find that it was easier after you left Morehouse?
No, well, you started it there, and there was a couple of high schools that were in the vicinity, and what we found out was that most of the kids that ended up at those schools in the Atlanta University Center, Morehouse, Spelman, those two schools in particular, most of those people were from somewhere else. They were not from the metro area. Clark and Morris Brown had more local students in those schools. And but one of the things we found out was that there were a lot of kids that needed help with reading and math and some other things. So we started the Frederick Douglass Tutorial Institute, I and a couple of other students.
Okay.
And we started that, and we formed a relationship with the local high schools so that we would be able to help those kids prepare to be able to come to the colleges there in the Atlanta University Center. Okay. And so that was my, one of my first introductions. I did a lot of volunteer work. Morehouse encouraged volunteer work. You had classes that you got credit for based on
the service.
Community service, and you had to go out and do things and bring that back, and it influenced your grades in some of those classes.
Over the years, have you found that at any period of your time as you served in different capacities that you served in, did you ever found it to be challenging serving other people? And if so, can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, sometimes the challenge is that the very people that you're trying to help are the ones that give you the biggest grief. You ran for office, so you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. You're out, you're trying to help people, you're trying to provide them with resources that they don't currently have, and they, giving you a hard time, about crazy stuff. But what ends up happening is that every time you get a little frustrated, you'll get a call or you get an email or you get a message from somebody that says, something that you've done has helped me tremendously, and I appreciate it. And when you get that, you kind of ignore all of the rest of that stuff, and you say, that's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because somebody needed help, and I was in a position to provide that help, and so you do it. I know you don't want to talk politics, but one of the things that led to this, I don't know if you ever ride down 280, around I-20 downtown, and you're getting on the highway, and these people have set up these villages, these tent villages.
I've seen
right there, and it bothers me big time every time I ride by there. And if I have something that I can give them, I'll stop and I'll give it to them. But that's temporary and it's not enough. And so I am trying to get some legislation that would provide money to our National Guard, the Georgia National Guard, that will allow them to set up these MASH type areas. You familiar with MASH?
Triage type.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where people who are in these situations where they're living out like that, that they can go and get, food, they can go and get shelter, clothes, and where they would be able to also get the medical attention that they need. We're in this pandemic, as you know, and we're not going to get rid of this thing if people can't get the vaccine.
Right.
So I want to be able to set up these MASH type facilities that would allow people that are living on the street to get food, clothing, shelter, and medical attention.
Well, definitely keep me posted on that, because that's, as a constituent of yours, that would definitely be something that I would be interested in helping with, and lending my voice in any kind of way that I possibly could. And that's in line. I was thinking about what you said about helping people, and then all of a sudden someone would tell you a story. I want to share once. We used to, back in the early 2000s, we would go to different prisons. Well, I was living in Illinois at the time, and we would go and talk to men and encourage men, and tell them there's a better way. You don't have to end up incarcerated. And one day, my wife and I and a good friend of mine, we were out having dinner, and a gentleman walked up to our table and just said, "Excuse me, you don't know me, or you might not remember me, but you guys came in and you talked to me, and I'm out. And as a result of what you guys said, you guys challenged me to not be a chef in prison, but be a chef outside of prison." And he was coming over to thank us and let us know that he was out, and that's what he was doing, and he was working towards doing it. So it is gratifying when you get those testimonies, if you will, for people that made a difference. And I was going to ask you about not just the challenging times, but the benefits. What have you seen over the years, the benefits of serving others?
Well, you talk about challenges too. If I could, there was one other thing that I think is really important. Um, if you are a dad,
Yeah.
And you have a son, it's really important that you interact with your son and your daughter, obviously. But there's something, about being a dad to a son where you have to get him ready for the challenges of the world, and get him ready for being able to do the things that are necessary to make life better for his family and for himself. And if I could share one other story, is that okay?
Sure.
Back in 2004, I was giving a speech at the Fulton County Board of Education. And during that speech, I felt this thing pop in my head. It was the weirdest feeling. Didn't hurt, just felt weird. And so I kept talking and finished the speech, but I didn't feel right. And, man, we don't like to go to the doctor. We don't like to admit that something's wrong.
Right.
But that night, my wife was there, and I did go to her, and I said, something is not right. I need to go to the hospital. And so we went to the hospital, and while I was there, we were going through the do you have insurance routine and all that kind of stuff. And apparently I passed out. And I had a blood vessel that I didn't realize. I had a blood vessel that burst, and it was bleeding, and then blood toxic to your brain, and it knocked me out. I woke up several weeks later, and then my wife told me all the stuff that happened during that period of time. I was speaking. The speech I was giving was trying to get a new school to replace Westlake High School. And so she said, when I woke up, the first thing I said was, did we get the new school?
Okay.
That was the last thing I remembered. And but when I woke up, it was the doctors were saying that basically they were telling her that she was going to have to take care of me for the rest of my life. That I was not going to be able to function. I wasn't going to be able to do this. So there was all the stuff that was wrong. And one of the things that was going on, my son was graduating from high school, from Westlake. And I stayed in the hospital over a month. And when I got out, I still had a little tube that was in my head. It was draining fluid out and everything. And I was going through what they call deja vu syndrome. And everything was repeating itself over and over and over again. I couldn't remember stuff. I mean, it was a mess. That's why they were telling everybody, telling my wife that she was gonna have to take care of me because I was really messed up. And but when I got out of the hospital, apparently that made the newspaper. And the school contacted me. They didn't know how sick I was, and they asked me to speak at his graduation.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going through all of this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was like, "Oh, hell no, you can't do that." My friends were telling me no.
Right.
They were all basically telling me that I should resign from the General Assembly. And it was election year when all this happened, and it was crazy. My son came to me and he said, "Daddy, I know mommy is telling you don't speak at the graduation. I know that your friends are telling you don't speak at the graduation. And I know what you're going through. But
Mm-hmm.
you always told me don't let anybody else set my limitations.
Wow.
You always told me that I'm the only one that could decide what it is I can't do."
Excellent.
And that hit home with me because I have been teaching him that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you think your children are not paying you any attention, but
Yeah.
he heard that and he threw it back in my face. So I went to my wife and I just told her what happened. And I said, "Look, I know I'm messed up, but I'm not about to let him down."
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, "If I get up there and I'm saying something crazy, if it sounds like it's off, just give me one of those, and I know to shut up and sit down."
Mm-hmm.
And she reluctantly agreed, but that's what I did. And she never gave me that. I can't tell you to this day what I said. I don't know, but apparently it worked. I didn't let my son down,
Right.
and it was motivating to me, and hopefully motivating to whoever you have listening. That
Excellent.
you have to encourage your children, but your son in particular, to go out and face his fears, face his battles, and do what you got to do so that you can make your contribution to society.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent story. We're almost out of time, but there are two pressing questions. These are pretty easy. I want to get your take on them. So, if you had to choose between Teddy Pendergrass or Marvin Gaye, who would you choose?
Hmm. Um, Probably Marvin Gaye.
Why would you choose Marvin?
His songs were, especially his later songs,
Mhm.
songs that made you stop and think. What's going on. Um,
Probably one of the top five. It's in my top five albums of all
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Right.
I like both of the artists, but his songs were more around social things, and Teddy was around love. Let's make love.
And my final question: Harlem 1960s or Harlem today?
Probably 1960s,
Okay.
because today Harlem is not
Yeah.
the mecca for Black arts and Black science and things like that.
Mhm.
Back then, I didn't appreciate it as much, because I was so young. But that was Harlem was the mecca for Black life,
Right.
uh, pretty much for the whole country.
Yeah.
When you said Harlem, it meant something.
Hmm.
And the people that came out of Harlem, I grew up 2 blocks from the Apollo Theater.
Okay.
And, so it was. I would take those days. Not all the crazy stuff, but the artsy part of Harlem.
Yeah. Um, Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to ask you this one final, give you the last, final statement, and I'm going to do this for every guest, who will come after you. But what would be your final message tonight to men about the importance of service?
Well, there's 2 phases for service. Service to your family. If you have a family, love your family. Let them know you love them. Make sure that they have all of the tools and resources they need to be able to contribute to society. But sometimes that family experience goes beyond flesh and blood.
Mhm.
You end up meeting people in the course of your life that don't have a family, and you can become their family. You can become the person that helps them through those things that a dad would normally help them through. And then, serve. You never know when you're going to need service, so pay up front. Make sure that the things are in place to help people who have the need. Not only, you want to make sure food, clothing, shelter, all the basics of life, that everybody should have access to that. And if you are in a position to help and you don't do it, then you're going to feel really bad later on in life. So start early, helping others, and pay it forward, as they say.
Excellent, excellent words. Thank you so much, Representative Bruce. I really appreciate you joining me tonight on this first show. Such rich information, such excellent stories. I'm really appreciative of your leadership. Again, everybody, this is my state rep. I support him wholeheartedly, and whenever I've called on him, he's showed up, and I really appreciate him being here tonight. This is our first episode of Image Builders Presents Conversations with Michael Carson. So check back in with us next week. We have an exciting guest lined up. One of the only Black business owners who's created a liqueur product who sells throughout the state of Georgia. We're going to talk about Black entrepreneurship next week. So tune in next week for more information about who we are, what we're doing, what we're about, how you can sponsor a show. If you want to be on the show, reach out to me. If you want to sponsor a show, that information is coming up shortly. So thank you again for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Representative Bruce. I appreciate your time.
Can you plug Under the Gold Dome before we go?
Yes, tomorrow on Facebook, join Representative Bruce and Representative Jackson on Facebook Live, Under the Gold Dome. Look for them on Facebook. Look for Under the Gold Dome on Facebook tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll be joining in tomorrow just to listen and to learn, as I've done in the past. If you have any questions for Representative Bruce, at the bottom you'll see his email scrolling across. Please feel free to reach out to him. He'll reach back out to you and get your questions answered about what's going on in District 61 and then abroad in the state. Also, he's our guardian, if you will, for the city of South Fulton. We live in the city of South Fulton. He's instrumental in us becoming a city. So really appreciative of your life service and for the things that yet to come and the things you've yet to do and the people you've yet to inspire. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, we're going to sign off now, but if you want more information about who we are and what we're doing, take a look at this short clip.